Hello everyone, my name is Michael Davis. My username is Zabrak200, and I'm making a video today to see how long it takes me to explain the most foundational elements of the Warhammer 40k lore while I go for a walk and smoke a joint. So, Warhammer 40k, first and foremost, what even is it? It's an intellectual property and has a series of games for tabletop and computer that you can play. But on top of all that, it's got a shitload of lore. Much like the Dune universe, it's massively expansive and takes place over millennia, thousands and thousands and thousands of years. Most of the events that are foundational take place around the year 30,000, which the 40k universe takes place in an adapted version of our humanity, where the homeworld in 40k is Earth as we know it, this planet Earth, though they call it Terra. They use a lot of Latin-rooted stuff, even though technically that's more an aesthetic thing. It's not because they actually believe in any kind of Catholicism or have any connection to it, because it's been, tens of thousands of years since the time that is now that would be the present in the year 30k. Anyway, so in around the year 30k, there was immense success with humanity. We had spread and colonized most planets in the galaxy. Successfully, we had the ability to transport in between them and all kinds of good, successful stuff. Anywho, the way this was possible was with faster than light travel through an alternate dimension known as the warp. This is a really critical component of the story and will come up a lot. So what people would do is they would open a portal into the warp. They would travel through the warp, an alternate dimension with physical space within it, and then they would jump out through a portal on the other side, effectively achieving faster than light travel by just kind of like wormholing themselves through the universe. So I'm gonna light my joint. All right, we're looking at 2.5 minutes right now. So, talking about the warp. Now, what's unique about the warp is that by the year 40,000, or actually not even by then, in the warp, how do I even say this? The warp is a dimension of spiritual energy, where all beings that have a soul, in this universe souls exist, by the way, just to clarify, and each person has one for the most part. There's some technicalities, but each person's soul there's a mirror of in the warp. And as a result, the warp is a swirling, tumultuous mass of spiritual energy of all the living beings in the universe. And in the 40k universe, there's also alien races besides humans. Some of which had a really strong connection to this alternate plane, such as the Eldari, who are essentially space elves. Though more like the Lord of the Rings-y, like tall blonde kind of elf design, live super long, right? You follow me. So the Eldari also achieved like a golden age of everything. They were living in a pinnacle of their society, completely unheld back by they didn't have to work. All they did was party. All they did was just party, relax, have good fun times. They had nothing to worry about ever. And as a result, these guys, these space elves, they partied way, way, way too hard. They partied so hard that they created literal demons in this alternate dimension. Like beings of immense psychic and spiritual power that could manifest and affect the literal world. And as a result, there was a massive hole torn in space-time where the alternate dimension started spewing out of. This is an issue, as you could imagine. And this started what's known as warp storms, which made it almost impossible for interstellar transit and communication to occur. So all of mankind, all of its interplanetary enterprise, its galaxy-wide spanning civilization was cast into an age of darkness where they couldn't communicate with each other and they couldn't travel to each other. And a bunch of these colonies either learned how to survive on their own or died. Now, these events, the fall of the civilization of mankind, the dark age of man, precede everything that happens in Warhammer 40k. So all of this shit is going down, and there's a bunch of... Actually, I'm trying to remember if this happens before this or no, I guess this happens a bit before this. So jumping a bit before this cataclysm occurs, there were a bunch of spiritual beings on Earth, shamans, people who had an awareness of this alternate dimension and could foresee that horrible things would happen if anybody were to get too powerful, and started to see it because they were aware of these other alien races' presence in the warp, in this alternate dimension, and they were seeing that it could lead to a point of no return. And as a result, all these shamans, these spiritual beings, collectively killed themselves. It's crazy, right? They did a huge ritual suicide, knowing that their spiritual energy would be, oh God, I'm forgetting the word, like reborn into a new being. And that new being, that new shaman that was born after this ritual suicide, he is who we refer to as the Emperor of Mankind. And he's a critical figure throughout the plot of Warhammer 40k. Well, yeah. Looking at 7 minutes right now. I have a sip of my Coca-Cola. So, foundational stuff. We're on Earth. It's the future. Faster than light travel. But shit's gonna go terrible because other alien races, and humanity included, are about to create such a large presence in this alternate dimension, it'll cause the fall of everything. So, in seeing this, like I was saying, all these shamans, they do a ritual suicide, they give birth to this new guy, the Emperor of Mankind. He starts a secret project to try and prevent, basically, the extinction of mankind. So in his project, he creates super soldiers. And he uses these super soldiers to get control of Earth. Because after this massive cataclysm happens, like I was telling you, every colony of mankind falls to pieces. So does Earth. Earth falls to pieces, just becomes a bunch of massive warring tribes of essentially like cyber, like super soldiers and advanced technology. Because they were still had a lot of this really advanced weaponry, and still do in the very modern setting of 40k, but that's jumping ahead a bit. So on Earth, Emperor of Mankind creates the Thunder Warriors, his super soldiers. He uses them to gain control of all of Earth. He unites them under a single banner, the Imperium of Man. And he declares that he will recolonize mankind and spread it once again amongst the stars. And so he starts the Great Crusade, which, as you could guess, is being quite satirical about the actual crusades that happened. But anyway, there's a lot of tongue-in-cheek jokes about 40k within itself. It is in a lot of ways very critical of Catholicism, especially, and like I said, during the era when crusades were happening. But I digress. So, Emperor of Mankind, his goal, recolonize all of mankind throughout the galaxy, reconnect the colonies that were lost, and, just try and do everything he can to prevent these literal demons that are currently spilling back into the universe from exterminating everyone. Right, very lofty goals. We'll get into why that doesn't work out so well in the end in a bit. But looking at almost 10 minutes right now. Where was I? So, Emperor of Mankind, he says, we're going to get them all back, all the colonies of man. So, in his goal to do that, he created the Thunder Warriors, Though, Thunder Warriors were a bit too powerful, so he dialed it back a bit and created the Adeptus Astartes, the Space Marines. The faction that we all recognize for 40k most of the time are the big guys in the mega suits of armor. So he creates the Space Marines, and he uses them to kill all the Thunder Warriors, because he's like, you're guys are too powerful, we can't just leave you all lying around. Pretty evil and bastardly, right? I think we can all agree on that. Anyway, so now he's got his Adeptus Astartes, and he's got an initial problem. He's only gotten control of Earth. There are other planets in the solar system that are still critical. Namely, Mars, where the Adeptus Mechanicus live. They are humans that became obsessed with technology and worshiping what they called the Omnissiah, which is a god they believe resides in all technology. Computers, vehicles, spaceships, you name it. They believe that there is a god that connects them all, the Omnissiah. And they all, as a result, are obsessed with becoming cyborgs. And a lot of them have their body augmented by having limbs replaced with robotic arms, eyes, mouthpieces, extra limbs, you name it. They do all kinds of weird, funky stuff. But anyway, so after the fall of man, like I was saying, this is while the Emperor is still stewing, getting this plan going. Mars lost contact with everyone else. They completely fell into their own thing of being obsessed with technology and machines, and they become the Adeptus Mechanicus, this group that is obsessed with creating and holding on to technology. So, Emperor of Mankind reunites Earth, heads to Mars, says, hey, we should team up, because you have a bunch of really awesome forging equipment, and I need to create a ton of gear for all my armies. And they say, yes, but you have to agree to let us keep worshiping the Omnissiah, because a really key component with the Emperor of Mankind's plan in creating the Imperium of Man is that it becomes a non-secular group, that there is no worship of any religion of any kind, because if there is, any amount would give power to these gods in the alternate dimension. Remember the one where even one was birthed and it led to the fall of everything? So he's like, I can't let any more exist. So his main goal is to be like, no religion, nobody practice it. No. So he gets the Adeptus Mechanicus, these guys on Mars, to join up. But their thing is, they're like, we're still going to worship the Omnissiah, but we'll also say it's you, okay? So we all agree on that. And he's like, fine. So they all team up, and then here's another super critical component of the story. He creates 20 genetically modified sons. I'm not sure if I could even name them all off the top of my head. There's a whole lot of them. There's Vulcan, there's Conrad Kurz, there's Robert Gilliman, there's Perturabo, there's Magnus the Red. There's 20 of them, right? Though 2 of them get disappeared, but we can get to that later. So 20 sons, and he works on genetically modifying them all to be like the peak pinnacle of human excellence and potential. And so he's working on them in his little lab in the Himalayas, fun fact, and then they all get disappeared. They get thrown into the warp there's a conspiracy against the Emperor by, would you believe it, Chaos Gods, because they didn't like what he was doing. But anyway, so where was I? I'm losing my train of thought. So the Emperor is making his 20 sons, genetically modified, and they all get tossed into the warp. They end up getting thrown throughout the galaxy, all over random planets. So each one ends up on a different planet, and as a result, they all end up being raised in completely different environments. Angron, for example, ends up being raised as kind of like a slave gladiator in a planet where it's just like rich people abusing their slave labor. Vulcan ends up being raised as a smith on a planet that's like a volcano planet that's all obsessed with just like endurance and strength. Mortarion gets raised as a slave under a planet where humans are kept in like acid marshes, basically, to be occasionally killed or hunted for fun by aliens that control the planet. Sanguinius was born on a planet of just like simple humans, and he ended up just being so inspiring and epic that they just worshipped him like a god, which also comes up with the whole religion thing. But anyway, I could go on. So he has all these kids. They all get disappeared to random planets, and almost universally they all become the leader of either the entire planet, sometimes even a region of planets surrounding it, or at least a large faction on said planet. Sorry, I'm just gathering my thoughts. So they all get disappeared. They all get raised on these different planets. And the Emperor of Mankind says, fuck it, I still will do my thing. He still tries to recolonize all of mankind. As he goes planet to planet, he slowly starts rediscovering his children. Each one in different states, like I was saying. Some ended up rather fine, did very well for themselves, like Robert Gilliman, for example, who ended up not only optimizing his planet's entire way of living for everyone's betterment, and then also reconnecting with other nearby planets, thus creating a small interplanetary empire, essentially. To guys like Angron, who, like I said, because he was stuck as essentially a slave, or Mortarion, they never really made it up to be more than just the leader of the humans that were immediately around them, that looked to them for strength. But then you have some that are really fucked up, like Conrad Kurz, who grew up on a murder world full of criminals and evil. And they called him the Night Haunter because his solution was just killing people so evilly and so brutally that no one would ever think of doing it to anyone else, lest they be caught by the Night Haunter. So, as the Emperor of Mankind slowly recaptures planets, which, might I add, not peacefully, sometimes just by killing everyone or killing whoever's in charge and taking over. It depended how much they were willing to be like, yes, we'll completely agree to let you take control and do whatever the hell you want. But anyway. So as the Emperor of Mankind slowly reconnects with all of his children, as he finds each one, and depending on which one, they have different trials and tribulations that allow them to reconnect one way or the other, all to differing degrees of success. With the more angry or the more disturbed, like Angron and Mortarion, he ended up doing some really fucked ass shit, especially with Angron, where he teleported his son onto his ship to watch all of Angron's friends die and then be like, well, you're still gonna lead my army. Or Mortarion had such a strong sense of honor that when the Emperor of Mankind intervened in his own quest, Mortarion's quest that is, Mortarion promised he would never forgive him for taking his honor in that moment, because Mortarion would have rather died trying his hardest without intervention than to let someone help him. But anyway, I digress. Eventually, the Emperor of Mankind reunites with all of his children. They all become leaders of their own armies of Space Marines, Adeptus Astartes, these super special warriors. They lead conquests across the galaxy, reconnecting all of the lost human worlds. That leads basically to the events of 30K, 10,000 years before 40K, where all this stuff actually takes place. I'm gonna take a sip of my soda now. Okay, so we're at 30K. Emperor's reunited with his kids, all grown adults. Right, it's children, you know what I'm trying to say. Anyway, so comes down to brass tacks. Is ideal world the Emperor, like I was saying, no religion, nobody practices it, no one thinks about it, no one talks about it, no one has any thoughts about anything spiritual because of the massively dangerous ramifications of it in this universe where believing in a god could make it literally manifest and destroy everything. So, in this pursuit he keeps the truth of the warp away from his children. He actively says nothing about the warp, about the demons in the warp, about the potential they have to destroy everything. He says nothing about it. But here's the thing. He couldn't keep it from all of his children because he's psychic. And much like himself, so were some of his children. Some of his children, for example, Magnus the Red, arguably the most powerful psychic of all his children, could very, very well see these demons in the warp. Very, very, very well be aware of these spirits. Even if he didn't know explicitly what they were, eventually there was a discourse. Eventually there was an entire meeting between the emperor and all of his children where they discussed whether or not psychic powers should be used by his soldiers, the Adeptus Astartes, or just in general, whether it should be allowed or outlawed completely. And, some of his children argued for it, Magnus, for example, and some of his children argued against it and said it would be dangerous and, aligned with their father, the Emperor of Mankind. We're looking at 21 minutes right now. Now, as a result, I believe what they did was they decided, I'm trying to remember, I think they decided to outlaw it. Though there's obviously some complications with that. For example, Magnus the Red, all of his Space Marines were psychic, because something I didn't get to yet, all the Space Marines were made with the genetic information of their particular Primarch. So for every one of these children, their genetic information was also stashed because they were genetically created. So, all of this was painstakingly recorded by the Emperor and his biological laboratories. So all of Magnus's Space Marines were also psychic and connected to psychic energy and aware of it. And as a result, a lot of them would slowly get corrupted by chaos. Chaos, literally, I didn't really use this word yet, but chaos is kind of the generic word for evil energy residing in the warp and its manifestations in the material universe. So a lot of Magnus's Space Marines would end up horribly mutated and grow like tendrils and extra eyes and teeth and extra mouths all over their fucking shit. It was awful. Or like goat heads and horns, and anyway. Enough time passes where there becomes a schism between the Emperor and his children. Arguably his greatest child, or the one that he believes to be the most successful as a leader, one that he elected as the War Master, that was his official title, Horus. Now, Horus is also immensely important in this story, and a big name to remember. Horus decides to start a civil war. He says the Emperor has lied to us. He has told us untruths. He has kept the truth from us. And he, blah, 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 blah. Basically, whatever he says, whatever he needs to say to convince his brothers to fight alongside him, because he does do this. He gets Angron, Perturabo, Mortarion. There's some more whose names are escaping me again. But he gets all of his brothers to agree to fight alongside him in a civil war on the Emperor of Mankind. And they invade Earth, the Imperial Palace. Now, there's also a critical moment to explain, something that kind of is the linchpin to all of the Civil War really starting. And that is when the Civil War is initially starting, when Horus is trying to convince his brothers to ally with him, because they don't just betray everyone just like all at once. They're very methodical. They wait a while before they get their best chance to annihilate as many loyal Marines, many loyal soldiers to the Imperium of Man as they can in one fell swoop. Before they do that, Horus is trying to round up as many of his brothers as he can. And in the process, one of the people he talks to is Magnus the Red, this one who is immensely psychically powerful. And he allies himself with the Emperor of Mankind. He says to himself, this is horrible. He wants to betray everything and destroy everyone. This is terrible. We can't allow this to happen. And so, in a bid to try and save everyone before it becomes too late. In his haste, he uses his immense psychic power to try and contact his father on Earth. And in doing so, he accidentally opens a massive portal to hell, and demons come spewing out of it into the Imperial Palace. Now, to the Emperor, this looks like a very, very not good thing. And he, after containing the warp storm, after fighting off all the demons, summoning his extra special forces, the Grey Knights, who were used explicitly to fight demons by all being psychic warriors, but being so secretive that if anybody witnesses them, they have to be killed. He uses all of this and his power to keep the warp storm at bay on Earth. This confines him to an item known as the Golden Throne. The Golden Throne both sustains the Emperor and also allows him to gain and maximize all of his psychic power. It's kind of like a chair that he sits in, and it sustains his life force but also amplifies his psychic ability. Now, he uses this to control the warp storm that's been opened and hold it at bay. But also, additionally, it's attached to another item called the Astronomicon, which is how mankind navigates through the warp. The Astronomicon kind of works like a massive lighthouse in outer space, or in the alternate dimension, the warp. We're looking at 26 minutes now. Fuck, I thought I could get through this quick. I guess not. So, right, the warp, the Astronomicon, the Golden Throne, the Emperor. So, the Emperor says, Magnus, you've committed treachery. I'm sending my son Leman Russ, the leader of the Space Wolves, to kill you all. And Leman goes to... Damn, it's escaping my mind. The planet that Magnus's people is from. Prospero. Leman Russ goes to Prospero, destroys it, kills a bunch of the Thousand Sons and the people on the planet. Space Wolves known for being particularly ravenous and brutal murderer, killer bastards. They bring Magnus to the Emperor, and they have a discourse where, Magnus is like, I didn't mean for this to happen. Oh, fuck. Actually, I might even be misremembering it. Maybe Leman slays him there on Prospero, but I digress. So, this cataclysmic event happens on Earth. This warp portal's opened. Now, there's a few other critical events that happened during the Civil War. There's another event that happens called the Istvan Drop Site Massacre. This is where a bunch of Space Marine groups, notably the Salamanders and the oh my gosh, my brain is farting right now. Their symbol is like a raven. I think they're called the Dark Ravens or something. I feel so stupid. I should know this, but anyway, them and I think another group of Space Marines are all horribly slaughtered after being tricked into unloading their ground forces on a ground assault. They're told that there's enemies there and they have to go and get them, so they all do this massive drop site. This massive, because Space Marines are capable of dropping from planetary orbits straight onto the ground using drop pods, and so they drop tens of thousands of soldiers onto the ground. And after this happens, the traitor Space Marines that were also with them, pretending to be their allies this whole time, just nuke the shit out of them. Just drop tons of explosives and then drop their ground forces on them, and it's just a massive slaughter. So it's called the Istvan Drop Site Massacre. So once that happens, then Horus, who led the Istvan Drop Site Massacre, it was his plan, he orchestrated it. So what he does, I'm just gonna adjust my pants real quick. So he does this massacre, and then he also tricks the other largest groups of Space Marines, the Ultramarines, the Blood Angels, and the Dark Angels, to go help out on a campaign on the other side of the galaxy. Now keep in mind, they completely agreed to all of this. All of them did, because Horus was elected by his father, the Emperor of Mankind, as the War Master. He unequivocally was given the title to administer these orders to all of these groups. So he does the drop site massacre, and he goes straight to Earth, ASAP, well before the Blood Angels, the Dark Angels, or the Ultramarines could get there. In fact, it actually becomes so dire at one point that the Ultramarines declare their region of space Empire Secundus, having believed that Earth could have potentially fallen completely. But anyway, I digress. So, you have Horus. He's gone to Earth. He's invading Earth. Now, there are Space Marines on Earth when this happens. Notably, the Imperial Fists, and I think another group of Space Marines whose name's escaping me. And of course, also all the Astra Militarum, the regular foot soldiers of the Imperium of Man, regular old bastards with laser guns and flak armor for explosions and not much else. So they fight tooth and nail to defend Earth from Horus's massive military might. So what's Horus's Legion? Horus's Legion is the Black Legion? No, the Sons of Horus. Iconic as well. And then he has some other groups. He has Mortarion, the Death Guard. He has Perturabo, no, that's not the Iron Hands. I'm getting it confused. There's another Legion. That's the Iron Warriors, maybe? I think Iron Warriors. I'm brain farting. But anyway, he attacks with a few of his sons and their armies. And they really give Earth a proper good fucking up. And there's an iconic duel where Earth holds out for long enough that eventually the Blood Angels, the Dark Angels, the Ultramarines all come to reinforce the Space Marines on Earth. And when they get there, there's this iconic duel. You can find like this beautiful artwork depicting it, where Horus and the Emperor of Mankind are dueling with another one of the Emperor's sons. Oh no, what is it? It's Sanguinius? Okay, sorry, from the top. Iconic duel between two sons of the Emperor, Sanguinius and Horus. Now, I mentioned Sanguinius before. He's like angelic looking. He wears golden armor and he has huge, literal white feathered wings that come out of his back. So they're dueling it up, and Horus kills Sanguinius. Little tidbit of lore for the Blood Angels. This creates a psychic event because Sanguinius was one of the sons of the Emperor who was psychic, and all of the Blood Angels, all of the Adeptus Astartes, the Space Marines that were of the Blood Angels, the ones that had Sanguinius's genetic information, they all lose their fucking mind and succumb to this thing called the Black Rage, which only happens to Blood Angels. And during the Black Rage, they think everybody they see is Horus and that they are Sanguinius, that they have to kill Horus, which leads them to kill their enemies, their friends, anything in sight. It's really not good. But anyway, I digress. So, Sanguinius and Horus duel. Horus slays Sanguinius. He kills him outright. Sanguinius is no more. And after that, then the Emperor of Mankind duels Horus. And in the process, he mortally wounds Horus. I think, what is it? They both mutually mortally wound each other? Or Horus is killed? No, I think Horus is killed. I'm trying to remember. I think the Emperor kills Horus. But honestly, it doesn't even really matter that much in the large scale of things. The critical information from this is that the Emperor becomes injured. He becomes confined to the Golden Throne, this artifact I was talking about, which both sustains his life force, but also, like I was saying, multiplies his ability as a psychic person, so it also requires him to expend an extreme amount of life energy as well. So in the process, he starts withering away. And the Emperor of Mankind at one point just stops saying anything and just becomes completely confined to the Golden Throne. I'm kind of skipping ahead a bit. After Horus is killed, or not, I don't really remember. Basically, the loyal Space Marines win, Earth is saved, and the baddies fuck off into that bit of space I was talking about where hell literally spills over into real space, which I think is called the Cicatrix Maledictum. I could be mistaken on the technical term, but all you really need to know is there's a massive wormhole that goes into literal hell, and that's where the baddies ran off to escape. Now, Emperor of Mankind, permanently injured, stuck to the Golden Throne. That's kind of it for him, honestly. At that point, he becomes stuck to the Golden Throne, and he uses his power to power the... oh my god, I said it earlier. My brain's farting. It's like a massive space lighthouse that allows humankind to travel through the alternate dimension of the warp. But anyway, look at 35 minutes right now. This is going to be a long-ass video. Well, honestly, this is kind of getting to be a good spot to wrap it up, because that is all the super main critical events that happen. So after the Emperor is wounded, he's stuck to this thing. Fun fact, to keep this powerful artifact running, they have to kill 1,000 psychic people a day. And so the Imperium of Man has a special group of soldiers that go out of their way to collect all the psychic people born throughout all the Imperium, bring them directly to the Emperor just to sacrifice them. And you would say, well, 1,000 people a day sounds like a lot of people. And something I haven't really mentioned yet is the scale of the Imperium of Man is absolutely crazy. Like, the population of a single hive city, which is the standard massive mega structure that typically humans reside in the 40K universe, can host trillions of people. Currently on Earth, there's maybe, like, to my knowledge, I believe like 9 billion people. Like, imagine 10 times that, then 100 times that, then 1,000 times. That is how many people live in a single city. And if even a small percentage of them are psychic, there's more than enough to throw thousands of them at the meat grinder. And that's the big thing with the Imperium of Man that I haven't really gotten to either. It's not a good organization. They do awful bullshit all the time. They force people to work, to fight, everything, to the death, without basically any regard for anyone. And that's just what keeps the cogs of the Imperium of Man running. It's what keeps it moving. Is an immense amount of manual labor that is very easily expended because there's just so many fucking people. It's huge. So, current setting 40K, Emperor of Man confined to the Golden Throne. The rest of the Space Marines, the rest of the Adeptus Astartes, and their Primarchs are off fighting on a variety of fronts. They're fighting Chaos Space Marines, the guys that betrayed them. They're fighting Space Orcs. They're fighting Space Elves. They're fighting the Tau, who are like space communists. They're fighting Necrons, who are like space robot zombies. They're fighting the Tyranids, who are like space dinosaur bugs. Ugh. And probably be more to come too. But yeah, looking at almost 40 minutes, and that's kind of the rough rundown of what's going on in the universe of Warhammer 40,000. Basically, you've got all of mankind, this fucked up system with these super mega bioengineered soldiers, the Adeptus Astartes, on the front lines of everything, absolutely obliterating anything that would dare stand in the way of the Empire of Mankind. Oh, there is one quite ironic thing I should mention. You know how the Emperor was so opposed to religion? Well, now everyone in the Imperium of Man worships him like he's a god, and he literally intervenes magically with some of the factions. For example, the Adeptus Sororitas, who are a bunch of female soldiers for the Imperium of Man. Sometimes when they fall in battle, they become possessed by some kind of godlike spirit that like makes light pour out of their eyes and mouths and makes them like a mega zombie powered creature for a brief period. And they called out those like rebirthed saints or something. I'm probably getting the technical term wrong, but that is a direct manifestation of the empire, of the emperor of mankind's power as a spiritual entity as a result of being worshipped by the current standing Imperium of Man. It's all very backwards and fucked up, and things have fallen so far beyond repair that the status quo is basically stuck as it is. Though that's also not universally true. There are some planets in the Imperium of Man that aren't absolute misery and shit. Those tend to be more like, for example, Macragge, the planet of Roboute Guilliman, who completely optimized the quality of life for all of the people on his planet and worlds. But that's rather a unique case. A large amount of the Imperium of Man live in those hive cities and live in, like, you know, the worst possible conditions you could possibly imagine. It's like absolute abject misery without much other option. Yeah. This is, some other important tidbits for the lore. No AI. There was much like the universe of Dune, there was an AI uprising that led to the banning of it essentially in all capacities. So no artificial intelligence unless it uses human brains sliced wafer thin as like wafer discs, I think is what I was told. And of course you can stuff a brain in a jar. That's how a lot of technology works. Or you'll just like lobotomize a person and use them as a, you know, like an elevator button, for example. You'd be like, go to floor 10, and it's just like a dude with his arms cut off and no eyeballs. Shit's grim. Shit's really grim. Oh yeah, other tidbits. The Adeptus Astartes, the Space Marines, a large amount of them don't survive the process of becoming Space Marines. Typically only like a third or less do, depending on the group. Sometimes way less, depending on the group. Yeah, other interesting tidbits. I mean, that's the thing. Like, you could just go on and on with the specific stories of the universe, but like I was saying, those are all the main components you really need to know. Fundamentally, there's an alternate universe known as the Warp that facilitates faster than life travel, but also hosts literal demons that are manifested from the belief of them in the material world. But also, here's something I didn't really get at, or maybe I did. This has been a long video. If you do or believe or think specific things or actions, you can also give power to these chaos gods. So if you're just murdering and doing war, you're manifesting power for the god Khorne, which like immediately like, well, aren't these guys always warring all the time? Yes. There's no winning. There's no winning here. There's another god, Nurgle, who's the god of like plague and death and decay. And again, it's like, aren't we doing a lot of death and killing and dying here? And yes. Other chaos god, Tzeentch, god of scheming and planning and deceitfulness. We're still doing a lot of that too. And the other one, Slaanesh, the god of debauchery and excess, gluttony, just absolute hedonism. Not as much, but still some of that going on, especially in the ultra wealthy, because there still is like somewhat of an aristocracy in the Imperium of Man, where if you're born into the highest echelons of society, you're almost guaranteed to have a really cushy life. But that's like a very, very select few, like a tiny minority. And there are also some unique cases where planets are extremely lush with life and have no hostile life. Those are considered garden worlds. Those are very, very rare, but there are humans that are born and live on them and have essentially very peaceful lives, undisturbed, assuming nothing invades their planet, which does tend to be one of the bigger issues. Is you have, and I'll go through the list again, you've got other evil humans, literal demons, space dinosaur bugs, space communists, which are like a conglomeration of alien races that work together, space elves, space orcs, and space robot zombies. Those guys we call the Necrons. yeah, so there's really no winning on any side. Everything's fucked. Nobody's coming up. All you can do is fight till you die. And that's just kind of the status quo of 40K. Now that you know all this, you're in great shape to go play some of the games, or roll some dice on a tabletop, or buy some miniatures and paint them, or you could go read a book, or if you get the Warhammer app, they got a bunch of TV shows and cartoons and like 3D anime, really high quality stuff too, I might add, not just like phoning it in. There's a ton of material to consume. Like I said, there's games, there's the tabletop, you can paint, you can read books, you can watch the TV shows, and like, let me tell you, you can read the books. There's hundreds of them. And the main plot alone, a lot of the critical stuff that I talked about takes place in the Horus Heresy arc. That book series is about 27 books long, I believe. And that one is completely dwarfed by the massive library of nearly like 400 something books that take place in the Warhammer 40K universe. There's just so much unique and neat lore. And almost every single one of the groups I've mentioned has dozens and dozens of books and Wikipedia pages that are so long it could take hours to get through them. Like, there's a ton of really, really neat content to dig your teeth into if you're fascinated by it. Almost every single aspect of the storytelling has an immense amount of lore written about it just to facilitate it. It's really clever. Yeah, I really think I covered it all, the critical stuff anyway, so... Off the top, I'm Michael Davis. Username's Zabrak200. You can catch me streaming as Ratface. I didn't mention that. It's my music profile. And yeah. This has been me describing all of Warhammer, all of the foundational, critical Warhammer 40K lore in one sitting while going for a walk and smoking a joint and drinking my soda. I think that's for me. I think that's it for me. I'm going to sign off, but I bid you guys adieu, and I hope you check out some 40K and ask someone who enjoys it a little question or two, because I'm sure they've got a lot of things they want to share. Yeah. Catch y'all later.